I normally make videos about Pokemon. I do that because it's a series I enjoy, even though the newer games have seen a decline in quality compared to the older stuff, and the games are feeling more and more like a cash grab, just quickly thrown out for the sake of printing money. I'm saying this because I know people are gonna go into the comments and claim I'm defending a multi-billion-dollar franchise, or that this is all just a big nothing burger, when that is not at all the point of this. It's about standing up for artists who aren't multi-billionaires like the companies some of them may work for. Palworld came out in early access on January 19th, 2024, and it exploded. Between it consistently trending on Twitter with hundreds of thousands of tweets, seemingly everyone and their mother streaming the game, and it selling over 5 million copies in 3 days, and achieving nearly 2 million concurrent players, the second most of any game on Steam ever, I think it's safe to say that Palworld is having an incredible launch. The game's been getting good reviews too. In the first 3 days after the game's release, it got over 34,000 reviews, 93% of which were positive. While this was going on, a lot of people were talking on Twitter about how the designs were a bit unoriginal, and also brought up how Pocketpair was dabbling in some shady stuff. Of course, it's the internet, things get overblown, misinformation gets spread, and proper sources can be sparse. So, let's take some time to look into Palworld, its developer Pocketpair, and these claims, and see how bad they actually look. Part 1. Craftopia. Pocketpair is a video game development company based in Tokyo, founded in 2015. They've released a few titles: Overdungeon, Craftopia, AI, Art Impostor, and, of course, Palworld. Overdungeon was Pocketpair's first game, and for the purposes of this video, we don't really need to know much about it. It released in early access on November 20th, 2018, and got a full release on August 23rd, 2019. Not long after, it stopped getting updates until 2023. The developers even admitted to giving up on Overdungeon for a bit. The next game they released was Craftopia in September of 2020, where it, too, was released in early access. Unlike Overdungeon, Craftopia is still in early access as of recording this video, over 3 years after its initial release. Before you think I'm trying to criticize that fact, looking at the Steam page for Craftopia and reading its description, I can see why it might take a long amount of time. Game development is a lengthy process, and this game is combining elements from sandbox, open world, survival, farming, hack and slash, factory management, hunting action, and fantasy RPG games all into one giant utopia. That really does sound extremely ambitious. You can even throw monster prisms at creatures to catch them. Wait, gotta catch them all? Isn't that phrase trademarked? Can they get in trouble for using that? Fast forward to June 2021, about 9 months after Craftopia came out, and Pocketpair released a trailer for a brand new game they're working on, Palworld. They showed off an open world with building, automation, farming, monster collecting, a lot of familiar beats, but then also guns and slave labor. These last two elements creating a perfect juxtaposition alongside the adorable creatures you can collect. Said juxtaposition was not lost on people. This trailer, and the second one released in January 2022, did a very good job at getting people interested in and talking about Palworld. After that first trailer made the rounds, however, the Craftopia Steam page got hit with a wave of negative reviews from players unhappy with Pocketpair announcing a very similar looking game, not only so shortly after Craftopia got released, but also while Craftopia was still in early access. Heck, even positive reviews were talking about how this doesn't look good. I, myself, also thought that it didn't look very good when I heard about it at the time. But it is worth noting that Craftopia never got abandoned like Overdungeon did. It got updates, including some major ones, and still is getting updates to this day, even after Palworld's release. So these fears turned out to be for nothing, but I wouldn't say they were unfounded at the time, especially when you consider that, back in June of 2021, Overdungeon hadn't gotten an update for nearly 2 years. Once in a while, we'd get new trailers for Palworld, Craftopia would get updated, Pocketpair would release some other game, and then January 19th, 2024 came around. Palworld got its early access release, and the accusations would begin. Part 2. Palworld. The big thing people are talking about with Palworld is that a lot of the pals, as the creatures of the game are called, have a lot of aspects of their designs in common with various Pokemon. So I had a whole big script written out for this part, saying I looked at each and every pal, and that just by looking at how they appear in the game, some of them definitely look like other Pokemon. Dire Howl looks like Lycanroc, Boltmane looks like Luxray. There are even some that look like fan-made Pokemon designs, and even Pokemon that were cut in the older Pokemon games. There were plenty more as well, but I went on to mention that there were a good number of pals that weren't incredibly similar looking to a Pokemon. And I even praised a couple of the designs, Penking and Tombat. I still think there's some of the neater looking designs in the game, and the fact that they aren't immediately reminiscent of a Pokemon helps with that. It helps them feel more original, even if there's nothing inherently super original about a blue penguin. At the end of that old script, I reached the conclusion that nothing definitive has been proven, and while this doesn't look good for Pocketpair and I'm very disappointed about their lack of originality, my non-lawyer self said it was probably unlikely they would face legal action. Then this article surfaced, and I hated my life because I had to redo the biggest section of my script. This VGC article talks about how an anonymous X account started showing off how the models of multiple pals in the game are extremely similar to various Pokemon models ripped directly from the Pokemon games. The article even has 2 experienced AAA game artists talking about how, yeah, this doesn't look good. One of them would even be willing to testify in court against Palworld if this turns out to be true. This anonymous X account is Biofrog. Looking at their tweets, they show off multiple pals having models that are extremely similar to certain Pokemon, but not quite exact copies. Biofrog's findings would later get tweeted by Eric Covington, a former employee of Blizzard. This is someone who has actual experience when it comes to making a video game. Eric has a thread on Twitter talking about how this really isn't a good look for Pocketpair, but is careful to point out, as Biofrogs did, that it's not proven that Pocketpair stole from Pokemon. Also in Eric's thread is a tweet saying that, in his own opinion, it's actually pretty likely that Nintendo or the Pokemon Company will take legal action. And the night before this video went out, the Pokemon Company announced that they were launching an investigation into another company's game that released in January 2024, heavily implying Palworld, and that they'll take appropriate measures if necessary. I don't think the Pokemon Company would announce this investigation if they weren't, at the very least, extremely suspicious of some of the designs possibly copying their Pokemon. Going back to the VGC article, it also contains comments from a pair of lawyers saying that the model comparisons Biofrog tweeted out could be extremely compelling evidence, and that if these are the original, unmodified models being used in these comparisons, then this could be a smoking gun. At the end of the VGC article, it's noted that Pocketpair CEO Takuro Mizobe said that Palworld had cleared legal reviews, and no company has taken action against the game or Pocketpair. Mizobe also says there's absolutely no intention of infringing upon the IP of other companies. Look, there's no definitive proof that Palworld stole from Pokemon, or Pokemon fans in the case of these 2 pals. Even Bio openly admits there are parts of models that are very different from their Pokemon counterparts. But regardless, this isn't a good look for Pocketpair. At all. Just a few months ago, HBomberGuy put out a video about plagiarism and how it's bad for a multitude of reasons, and I think we kind of cared about that. James Somerton nuked his YouTube channel after HBomberGuy spent, like, 2 hours going into excruciating detail about how James stole from an insane number of people, and we got upset that James did that. Now that Palworld's accused of stealing, all of a sudden, when we're calling it out, we're just defending a multi-billion-dollar company, and nobody cares. Here's something that I think at least a good chunk of people don't necessarily realize when they're arguing on Twitter. Taking a stance on something isn't a binary choice. It's not just, I'm on this side or I'm on that side. You can be disappointed in Pokemon's quality over the past few generations and be disappointed at these Palworld accusations. You can like Palworld and be disappointed that some of the pals have uninspired, possibly stolen designs. When we're calling out Palworld and say that they may have stolen from Pokemon, we're not saying that because the multi-billion-dollar company is getting hurt. We're saying that because they may have stolen from the artists who made those designs, artists who aren't multi-billionaires. This is likely even more so the case with the pals that look like fan-made Pokemon designs. If they did steal from Game Freak, they didn't just steal from a multi-billion-dollar company, they stole from people like you and me, and that's not okay. I went through all of the pals that Palworld launched with, and I found about 24 that I think are extremely similar looking to some Pokemon. And I'm not the only one who's done this. There's 2 other Twitter threads that I found that go into detail about which Pokemon Pocketpair may have taken from, even before Biofrog started posting their stuff. People will say, well, yeah, of course some pals are gonna look like Pokemon. There's over 1,000 of them now. Like it's unavoidable. Let me show you Cassette Beasts, another open-world creature-collecting RPG that's been trending on Twitter recently. Cassette Beasts has over 120 beasts to capture and train, and there aren't multiple people making threads about extreme similarities between the designs in Cassette Beasts and Pokemon. I played through the whole game, and it was a really fun time, and I wholeheartedly recommend it if you're looking for a Pokemon-like game. This isn't a paid ad or anything. This is me saying that it's way more than possible for a game like this to have original designs. And I think Cassette Beast deserves your money way more than Palworld. And we haven't even gotten into the other allegations that Pocketpair is facing right now. Part 3. AI Art Impostor. On November 3rd, 2022, Pocketpair released the game AI Art Impostor. AI Art Impostor is a game where you use generative AI to create images that fit a category and a theme, but one of you is an imposter and doesn't know the theme, just the category. You have to try and figure out who the imposter is, while also preventing the imposter from guessing the theme. The crazy thing is that I've seen people claim that AI Art Impostor does not involve generative AI, despite the Steam page for the game saying AI Art Impostor is an AI drawing party game, and the early access blurb explicitly mentioning that the game has AI generated images. On top of this, the CEO of Pocketpair even tweeted himself that the game generates illustrations with AI. Some people say it's just the imposter that uses AI, but here's footage of a non-imposter player using AI to make an image. I don't know how people can say this game isn't wholly about using generative AI to make images. Now, here's the thing. From the research I've done, I can't find any mention of what model of generative AI this game uses or what it was trained with. When you use generative AI to make a picture, you're likely using a model that was trained on art made by artists who didn't necessarily consent to their art being used for something like that. Because AI Art Impostor makes some pretty decent looking stuff, and in a number of art styles, I'm guessing it had a wide pool of images to learn from. The question is, what AI model did Pocketpair use, and did the creators of said model have consent to use whatever images were used to train it? We may never know, which puts AI Art Impostor in this gray area of morality. Some of you may be going, wait a minute, Steam banned games with AI-generated art in them. How is this game allowed to be sold? The answer is that that's not really 100% correct. People saying this may be thinking about a particular Reddit thread posted in June of 2023 that gained some traction a couple of weeks later. A game developer says he submitted the game with obviously AI-generated assets/sprites. After submitting the build, the developer got a response reading, in part, "As the legal ownership of such AI-generated art is unclear, we cannot ship your game while it contains these AI-generated assets, unless you can affirmatively confirm that you own the rights to all of the IP used in the dataset that trained the AI to create the assets in your game." What this is saying is that if you can prove your generative AI model is only trained on images that you own the rights to, and have consent to use for training a model, then it's fine to include generative AI in your game. Now, you may have noticed that the date I mentioned earlier, June 2023, is after the release date of AI Art Impostor, but the game never got taken down. This means one of three things happened. 1. Valve applied their generative AI policy to games that had already been released on Steam, checked AI Art Impostor's model, and found no problems. 2. Valve applied the policy to games that had already been released but didn't check AI Art Impostor. Or 3. Valve did not apply the policy to games released before June 2023 that featured generative AI. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a way to confirm which one of these happened. I reached out to Valve and Steam on Twitter, as I couldn't find another good way to contact them, and they never responded. So, maybe there's nothing wrong with AI Art Impostor, but generative AI is borderline stealing, and Palworld is currently being accused of stealing. When these kinds of accusations are being made to multiple pieces of work by the same person or corporation, it only increases the amount of suspicion on the accused thief. In this case, that'd be Pocketpair, and perhaps its CEO, Takuro Mizobe. Speaking of which, Part 4. Takuro Mizobe, Pocketpair CEO. While people were quick to point out that the designs of certain pals were looking suspiciously similar to certain Pokemon, some people were also taking a look at the Twitter profile of Pocketpair CEO Takuro Mizobe. There are numerous instances of him using and praising generative AI, even wondering if it can be used to ignore copyright issues. I'll reiterate that Mizobe claims there's no intention of infringement in Palworld, and the game cleared legal reviews. And I'm only realizing I forgot to mention this now while I'm in the middle of editing, but there's no, definitive proof that Palworld used generative AI while the game was being made, or anything like that. But if everything that's been shown off so far isn't enough for concerns about potential theft to be valid, what else is it gonna take? This is a company with a track record of releasing games with questionable levels of originality, headed by a man who's not only expressed interest in using generative AI to get around copyright and make entire games, but also released a game whose whole gimmick is using generative AI. Wanting to use AI for these purposes is dangerous, and combined with the shady accusations Pocketpair's games are facing, Mizobe's done a good job of thoroughly disinteresting not only me, but probably numerous other potential customers as well. There's one more thing I want to bring up about Takuro Mizobe, and it can be found on his Twitter bio. In there, it says, CoinCheck founder. You may be wondering what CoinCheck is. Allow me to read the beginning of the Wikipedia article for it. CoinCheck is a Japanese Bitcoin wallet and exchange service headquartered in Tokyo, Japan, founded by Koichiro Wada and Yusuke Otsuka. There's a name missing here! Looking at CoinCheck's website, half of it is in Japanese, and perhaps because of that, or perhaps because it's just not listed anywhere, I can't find a page or anything talking about or listing the company's founders. So, is Takuro Mizobe actually a founder of CoinCheck? It's a little difficult to find out. CoinCheck doesn't seem to be interested in telling, and Mizobe's LinkedIn, oh, there's two of them, Well, this one contains nothing, and this one seemingly hasn't been updated since 2012. According to a little bio about Mizobe on Pocketpair's website, CoinCheck was founded in 2014, so if his LinkedIn hasn't been updated since 2012, of course it's not going to be there. There is this slide from a PDF on CoinCheck's website I eventually found, detailing something called CoinCheck for EC, where, wait a minute, CoinCheck is misspelled in their own slide. How did that happen? Mizobe is listed in this slide alongside Koichiro Wada and Yusuke Otsuka, the people listed in the Wikipedia article as founders of CoinCheck. Here, Mizobe is listed as Management Director, and this is about as close as I can get to confirmation that he is indeed a founder of CoinCheck. At the very least, he's held a high-ranking position at the company, so he's into crypto too. Awesome! When looking at Palworld's trailers, a recurring theme I noticed is the juxtaposition of cute, friendly creatures and something awful happening, like forced labor or being used as a shield against bullets. This is an easy way to get people talking about your game and sharing your trailer on social media, which gets even more people to talk about your game and share your trailer. Even if people are disgusted by what the player can do with the pals in the game, it just gets more people talking about the game. Even if the game comes out and people realize pals look suspiciously similar to Pokemon, it generates more discussion about Palworld. It's free advertising at the end of the day, which leads to more sales, which leads to more money. And when your trailers evoke laughter and shock and are basically meme-worthy, it can be hard for people to realize or even get behind anything potentially sinister with your product. In a blog post made by Mizobe, he claims the budget of Palworld was over 1 billion yen, about $7 million US. As of writing this script, it sold over 5 million copies in about 3 days. With the game being on sale for $27 right now, 5 million copies sold equals around $100 million of profit, once you take into account the fees storefronts like Steam take. $100 million. Straight into the pockets of a company that supports generative AI, releases games that are embroiled in controversy and lack creativity, and is run by a CEO who's into cryptocurrency. And while most people are focused on Palworld, some have realized Pocketpair's next game is looking a little familiar. Nevergrave, The Witch and the Curse is a Metroidvania roguelike that has a graphical style extremely similar to Hollow Knight, another popular Metroidvania whose sequel is taking forever to come out. It's very easy to imagine Pocketpair capitalizing on the wait for Hollow Knight's sequel by making this, instead of making something more original looking. Nevergrave is targeting a Q1 2024 release, basically any time now, and it, too, will be in early access. Just like Palworld is. Just like AI Art Impostor still is. And just like Craftopia still is. I sincerely hope Pocketpair gets a wake-up call at some point, and this investigation by the Pokemon Company goes somewhere. Not because I'm a fanboy blindly defending the Pokemon Company, not because I like Pokemon, and not because I like Hollow Knight, but because this company has repeatedly shown they're creatively bankrupt and would rather use shady methods to make games, methods that might be stealing from people, rather than actually be creative. Inspiration is one thing. Copying, either borderline or fully, is another. Please, if you want a game that's Pokemon-like, please consider buying something like Cassette Beasts, or Koromon, or any of the other plentiful amount of options that aren't made by a company like Pocketpair. I tweeted out at one point that I was watching H-Bomber-Guy in the background while doing research for this video, and I think that leaked into the structure of this video a bit. At some point, I ended up adding parts and conclusion into the script, like how his videos are divided into parts and the conclusion. I don't know. I spent the better part of the last 3 days working on this script and research and recording it and editing it, and I think I need a rest. You can find sources and whatnot in the description. A big thanks to Mithril Monarch and the rest of my patrons for going the extra mile and financially supporting the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.